Hello and welcome to the latest ARCHLine.XP webinar. My name is Zoltán Tóth. Over here is our resident architect, Mr. Idéspap.
Hi there.
Today's topic is architectural design documentation. Lots to do, so let's take a look.
Building Information Modeling, or BIM for short, is a wonderful tool to create great architecture. Unfortunately, many might believe that BIM is out of their reach. This is because adapting from 2D drafting to BIM might seem time-consuming and costly. Also, it seems that BIM means a whole new workflow and methods which you need to learn from scratch, and the new requirements and legislations may seem too complicated to follow. Our mission behind ARCHLine is to open a gateway to BIM. ARCHLine makes the transition from 2D drafting to BIM step by step. It takes you from 2D to 3D modeling and introduces BIM parameters to your workflow. Sharing your projects with other professionals is effortless. The software makes sure that you can use your already existing CAD skills, files and projects to stay competitive. The gate is now open for new challenges and previously unavailable projects. ARCHLine is an out-of-the-box Ifc certified BIM software. No extra plugins are needed to complete your project because your design will contain everything in a single file. You will work together with other parties of the building industry seamlessly. Avoid misunderstandings. Use real products. Collaborate better than before. BIM is quickly becoming the standard. Make sure you are there. With ARCHLine.
And let's get it started. Last week we talked about how to use architectural documentation in your design. We showed how to import DWG and DXF drawings and how to use geolocational elements in your design. But today we look at the other end of the working process. We see how to create architectural documentation from your model. Can you tell us in a couple of words what we are going to discuss today?
Well, first we will talk about the dimensions and annotations, how you can add those details and how to make the changes, how to update those, for example, the room and area stamps and things like that, how to handle that content. And then we will move on and work with the sections and elevations, how to generate them. There is a method in ARCHLine which allows you to create a dynamic section content, or you can sometime decide to unlink it and create an unlinked kind of drawing copy of it, which is a very useful thing to do. We will teach you about that in detail. We will also talk about how to create the plot layouts and what makes a plot layout working, and how you can add those details and what makes the connection between the content and the original drawing, and how to reorganize the things when it's necessary, because at the end, for example, you add some content as a new phase. For example, like there's an existing phase and then you create the demolition plan and then you add that as well.
Perfect. So there's a lot on our agenda. So let's look at the model itself. And while we look at it, let's talk about the chat facility which I have on the right hand side. So I see that you're already checking in and saying hi to you all.
Hi.
This is where you can ask your questions during the show, and at the end we are going to try our best to answer them. So as always, we are looking at this model which was made by one of our customers, and this is what we used before, and this is what we used when we were putting together the model. But now we are looking at how to create documentation out of this drawing. So the first thing I think what we should discuss is the basic documentational things, annotations, measurements, right?
Yeah. Well, the measurements and all sorts of dimension tools you will find in the dimension bar, and this collects the quick dimension, length dimensions, labels, building dimensions, and so on. Now, what I find the most useful when I create the drawings and when I make the annotations, I mean the dimensions around, is the building part. There is a command which allows you to make dimensions wall by wall. Or there is one which allows you to select the whole building and it creates the whole documentation, I mean the dimensions around. Now this is fairly simple because it has a list of dimensions that you can, they're like sets that are there for you to choose and pick up, like ready-made options. And with these you can click on any of those and add to this list. This is actually kind of an execution order, which means that the software will create the first dimension string based on this, then on this, and then on this.
Okay, so that would be the order.
Yeah,
by
like
which it
there will be
listed.
3 lines of strings, we call them, 3 different dimension strings following each other with the details, like for example the door window axis, the wall endpoints and connections, like for example there are the the partition walls, and there is the final one. This one is the kind of the sum of the length of the whole building or something like that. So this is how you can assemble a list like this. For those of you who like to create buildings on a grid with the center line of the walls, there is an option to set up the dimensioning the midpoint. This will measure actually the core layer, the center of the core layer of that wall. And as you can see, there is also a specific setting to only treat the core layers of the walls as something to be measured. So these are also settings for specific different dimension styles that you or building styles that you would like to annotate or make dimensions for.
So first you select the criteria. Now we have 3 listed, and then what do you do?
Yeah, then and now what I do, I just click on OK, and then I can select the whole building. This is one of the fastest tools, because whenever you have a complex detail, either this type or another type, you can just hit enter, and then you can just set up where the dimension string will be, and then the software will create that dimension string. Actually, in this case, 3 different specific dimension strings. And then you can see the details, like that was the first one, I believe that was the door and window axis. And then as you can see, there's a break in the elevation, like here, and there is the center, and then the next one and the center. Then comes the connection points, like with the thickness of the wall and so on. This is the second line, and the final is the sum of the length of the building. So this is how it works, and this is what you can find all around. And there is a very important thing with this, that, for example, if you change your plan during design, this is a fairly regular thing to do, because you need to update the design for any sort of reason. See, it updates the dimension as well. So whatever you change, I just undo that, so you will see it's following the dimension. Yeah.
Perfect. What do you do if you want to put measurements and dimensions manually? Because these were automatically generated, but maybe you want to measure some things in the inside, maybe some partition walls. How do you do that?
Yeah, well, for example, let's start with the most basic dimension tool possible, which is the length dimension. This allows you to pick 2 points, and then you can measure any sort of distance. This is the most basic tool that you can use. With this one, you can measure furniture placements and so on. But there is another one, which is the serial horizontal and serial vertical. This is very useful also. We will show you that when you work with sections, for example. But now you will use this serial in horizontal, and this allows me to pick points like this one and then this one, and set up a dimension string. I mean I'm just setting up a dimension, for example, here somewhere in the center, and then I just keep going, and then just click, and then this way I can just position sometimes the text when it's too small, and then I can just easily pick those breakpoints and make dimensions like the internal structure of something, like the building or something even more detailed. This can be used for used not only for walls but any sort of detail as well.
How do you define how the measurements and dimensions look like? What if you want to change the arrowhead?
And these are all settings that come from either from the style that you use, so you can pick up different specific tiles. This really is based on what sort of dimension style you start. For example, when you go with labels, you will have a different one. Yeah, well, that's actually appearing. You can add labels as well. So this style really depends on what sort of building or dimension style you use. Like, for example, if I'm willing to change this dimension style, some of you might like this style appearing, and some of you might not. Now, this is also something that is based on the settings of the dimension. Let's just talk about that. If I go into the settings of this existing one, or I go to the properties and I change the length, that's was the same setting dialog. Just in this case, I'm editing an existing dimension. So I'm going here. So you will see that you can change the font style of the dimension, the font size, the arrowhead, the ending of the dimension, and also the formats, the standards, and this is very important. Some of you might like to use the SIA 1 centimeter,
yes, so
or the DIN, and this is how the software is treating that. And when you find some sort of setting that you prefer much more than default, then you can just simply save it in your own style, just as you can do with any other things. You can just click here, and then you can just click on new and create a new style, and then use it all around the new projects as well.
What about annotations? I see a couple of them on the floor plan. How do you place these?
These are actually, there are two types which I use quite frequently. One is the label. Let's just start with that. I usually use the label on the sections, but also I think it's wise to talk about that. Like I just click on label, and then I just type the text. Like for example, that is what I'm willing to highlight is the contour of land or something like that, or the slab or something like that, and I click OK. Then I need to click on what I'm willing to refer to, and then I just set up the arrowhead, and then this is how I can do that. This is also something that you can change the font style, the ending, and you can fully customize it. The other one is even more simple. That is actually the text tool. The text tool is something that allows you to literally type any sort of text, and let's say there is, for example, storage under stair, like storage under storage under
staircase.
Under staircase, yeah, I'm not in good shape typing, so staircase.
So this is just plain text, right?
Yeah.
So there's no arrowhead, there's nothing, you just type it in.
It's just plain text. I actually have something like that here, so you can just place it over there, and then...
it's very good that this came up, because now you see that the font size is different between the two text fields. So how do you amend that?
Well, there are two ways to do that. First things first, you can click on that and you can see the size of the text. So you can change it, I don't know, let's just change it 10 centimeters. Yeah, I think, like this one.
Yes.
See, this way you can change the size of the text. You can make it larger, you can make it smaller. Actually, this changes this value here, which is
it's either or.
Fairly similar of how you would like to change the thickness of the wall or the height of the wall or something like that. All the rest of the properties are here at the left-hand side.
Now, the next topic connects to text, but it's a bit more than that. What about room and area? I see that there's a couple of stems, not in this version, but what if we want to calculate the net or gross area of a room? What if we want to add some functions to it?
Okay, well, for that one, you can use the building tools, and there's the room and area. Now, the room and area comes with a few options. For one of the simplest is the room by walls. This allows you to pick up a wall, a room. As you can see, as you move around your mouse, the software is actually recognizing the rooms, and you can just click there, and then the software will place a room with a specific text. This is also fully customizable. You can just click here. You can say that, for example, this room is actually, I don't know, like an office or something like that, or work room or something like that. And you can change that here. Or there is another option actually, which allows you to make the software recognize the room contours, and then automatically placing room and area stamps here. So if you click that, then the software is going around, and it's recognizing the rooms, and it's making fairly simple stamps here, which you can again customize. Like let's just do that here. I'm saying this is a bedroom.
So it gives you the basics, but then you can customize it in terms of what kind of value to show, because now it doesn't show the net or gross areas, but you can make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you don't have to manually click on the rooms, and that saves a lot of time.
Yeah, this saves a lot of time. Actually, when you have more than 10 rooms, this is just tedious to click. However you would like to have these things here.
What happens if you go back and change the wall layout? Do they update automatically?
Yes, absolutely. So when you do that, when you change this here, let's just make a change here. I'm just moving this wall, I don't know, 10 centimeters to the side. As you can see, the software is updating the storage itself. We couldn't see the value of the appearing area, but you can see the contour is updated. This actually really depends on the settings, how you treat that room in the settings. And talking about the settings of the room, you can find all sorts of settings here, but the most common is actually the calculated values, where you can enable that you would like to, for example, highlight the gross area of this thing. You don't want to see the room number, for example, or you would like to see the floor finish, and then you click OK, and this is how you can customize. This is something actually what you can also save as a room style. And then fairly similar to the wall styles or something like that. When you make the manual placement like this here, you can say that, well, actually what I'm willing to place now is, let me just remove this here, so there will be an example to that. This will be an office, for example. It's an office, so I'm clicking here, and I will see it's these are even colored.
Oh, these are the presets.
Yeah, these are the presets.
What I want to see is what do you do when you don't have a clearly defined contour? For instance, if you go outside,
on the terrace, for
terrace
example.
over there, but I don't think that the software will recognize the contours automatically. So you would
no,
have to do
it
that.
won't, because as you can see, when I'm clicking on this tool and I'm willing to recognize the contour of the terrace, it's not making it like it's doing it here, because there are no walls bounding the terrace, which is fairly natural. So this is when I need to use a different tool. It's still the room and area, but what I will use the room by Polygon, and this allows me to literally manually follow the contours of that room. That but in this case, this is not literally a room. It's just like a virtual room.
But if
it's an area.
Maybe you want to know the square meter value of this.
Yeah. So I'm just following the contour. I'm just tracing the edges and the contours, and then when I hit enter, then I can place the text. I can actually make excludes, like there is an area which I'm not willing to treat as part of this room. This is what happens now. If I'm just skipping that and I hit enter, then I can set up the height of the room. This is because now the software is not recognizing the space around itself, but you can determine what will be the height of this whole area, and then the software can calculate the space, I mean the volume of that virtual room as well. So I'm just typing, I don't know, 2.7 here as well, and then the software will be able to calculate the volume of this here.
Don't forget that the last style that we selected is
going to be used.
So
yeah.
This works perfectly. But I see a couple of symbols over there, and we haven't talked about using symbols and
these and
groups. So, for instance, that elevation symbol or north signs or these kind of things, how do you add them to your?
Now, the elevation symbol that's still what the software treats as a dimension. This is here. This is the elevation on floor plan. It's very simple. You just click on that, and then you need to tell the software what is the thing that you would like to measure. I'm willing to measure, I don't know, the bottom part of this wall, for example, and then so I click on the wall itself, and then I click on one of the points of the wall, and then I can tell the software which point of this selected wall should be measured, and I say, okay, this should be the bottom, and then the software recognizes it was 0. And then I click OK, so the software actually highlights a style for me, which I can replace to another symbol if I want. And then when I'm happy with that, I can just place it here, and then the software is creating that as a symbol and a dimension.
Yes. What about north signs?
The north sign is something. Now, don't mix up the north sign with the real north direction of the project. We talked about that, how to set up the geolocation of the project, and it is already set here. Now we have a north direction set up properly based on the location of this building. Now, but when we print this layout, we won't see that appearing on our drawing. So we need to add as a visual clue, as a symbol, and we call those things groups. Those are the 2D symbols. So you go to the design center, you find the groups, and you will find signs. There are tons of different types of signs, and there are the north symbols as well. So you can click on any of those, and you can select something that you like to use. And if you like that, you can just click and drag, and you can just place it somewhere on your drawing, like for example here.
How come it's not pointing upwards?
Well, it's the difference between this and this. It's because the software recognized the original north sign, so it's auto-aligning this this north symbol, so it's very simple to handle. Now there is one specific thing with the groups. Sometimes you will use colorful groups, colored hatched groups, but sometimes you would like to use them as black and white or grayscale things or grayscale symbols. In that case, you can click on those and you can force their color. I mean, this is the color which belongs to the group, but we cannot see that because the group has colorful primitives like lines and things like that. So you can click on force color, and then this color will be forced.
Perfect. Now we are getting to the territory when we actually start creating documentation, and this is when we talk about sections and elevations. That is a tedious job. So what kind of things or tools do we have in the software to make that easier and faster?
The section and the elevation is always generated out of the 3D model. So the details of the sections and the elevations will be as much detailed as you already made the layers or any sort of connection between the slabs and the walls and things like that. So if you create something like what I did here, this is still just a conceptual drawing. There are no layers in it. You will have a conceptual section as well, but when you go on and progress with the drawing and you add those layers, the dynamic section will still follow it. Let me just show you an example to that. So what I do now, I just create a section, and then now the section is actually something that you can find in the documentation part, and there is an option to create the section. There are 2 or 3 different styles or section types that you would like to use, but the most common is the define section. Define section brings up a dialog which tells you what sort of settings you will use. You can just simply acknowledge that, okay, this is what will happen, or you can make changes. Like, for example, I prefer to use the left and right side, I mean the starting and the end point, A or B or C symbol visible. I also prefer to have the section hatched because this is an architectural section, and I prefer to hide the details, like I don't want to see the objects appearing inside and so on. So I just usually skip those, but it really depends on the design that you create. And also there is a setting to create a region depth, but I will show you that once the section which we are creating now is already created. So I'm just acknowledging that, okay, this is what I will create, and then I just draw a section line, which let's just make it start from here and then follow a straight line, and when I'm done, I just set up the view angle, the view direction. I just would like to create a section which is from the bottom to the top. So the bottom part will be skipped and the top will be visible on the section. And when I click on create, yes, then now the software makes the section. And once again, now the structure is very simple because I didn't make the details.
Is this a line drawing?
This looks like a drawing, but this is actually a very special representation of the model. When you zoom into any sort of part and you select the item, you will see that this is actually the door, and this is actually the window, and so on. So these are still the original items, which makes a very good approach when you would like to make details, when you would like to make changes. Like, for example, I'm willing to change the position of, for example, this wall here. Then I click here and I move it to the side. Let's just move it, I don't know, 0.2. We are working in meters now, so it means 200 millimeters to the right. So when I'm updating this, the software will auto update the section as well. Sometimes you might see the section kind of disassembling itself. It's just a temporary representation. But whenever you click on the 3D rebuild, the 3D update option, the software will not only rebuild the 3D, but it will also update the connecting drawing. So now the wall is actually moved and the section is properly represented.
If we go back to the section line, and maybe we want to make a cut into that, maybe we want to have that part go below the room. So how do we do that?
Yeah, well, there's two ways how you can approach this thing. First things first, you can actually create a polygonal section out of the box. But if you didn't do that and you realize that you need to break the line, then it's something that you can easily do. You just click on the section line, and then you click on the line itself, and you will see the insert node appearing. It's fairly similar to the slab contour, for example. You just add the node, like I'm doing it here, and then now I have two parts, and on the right-hand side part I can use the offset to parallel shift it to the bottom. So now there is a break, and when I click on yes, update it. See, now we didn't see this door, but instead we saw this window. But now when I click on update, this will appear different. Now we don't see the window appearing here, but the door, because that's what is not intersected.
You did mention that this section comes with hatch patterns, but
yeah.
Where do these patterns come from?
Yeah, like for example this here, this or the hatch inside the wall. This is appearing because the structure is intersected, and the reason why it appears specifically like this is the material settings. Now let's just go and find the material settings of this specific slab that I'm selecting here now in the section. So I'm going to the settings of this the slab, and I'm going to the slab layers. Now in the slab layers I can see that inside the slab, now it's only one layer, I have a concrete material, and if I go to the settings of this concrete material, let's just click on edit material, then I can see the rendering settings, the thermal parameters, and there is one interesting thing here for us, and that's the hatch on section, and that's why it appears like that on the section, because it has been set to be using this specific hatch pattern with this specific iteration and this specific color. Like so to show you how it works, when you change that, and let's just make it, I don't know, kind of like a bluish color. Let's click OK and close these up. So it will appear with that color when I again update the section and the complete model with the 3D hammer. And now not only this, but also all the other parts sharing the same material will be automatically updated, which makes
so
this
the
easy.
point here is that these kind of hatches you don't set up on the object level, but instead you set up on the material
level. Yes.
A couple of things about these. Before we show how to unlink this, how are elevation drawings different from sections?
Okay, so there are the section drawings. I will organize this content. So now we have the 2D layout, the dynamic section, and the model. Let's just go back to the ground floor. So now I'm creating the elevation. Now there is a tool to create wall elevations, but those are different. Those are mostly for the interior designers. If I would like to create the architectural external elevation drawing of the building, I will use the elevation tool right at the project navigator. Now if you don't see the project navigator appearing on your computer, it's likely because by default the project navigator is in a hidden mode like this. So in that case you will see the project navigator appearing here, and then you can click on this little tiny pin, and you can pin it to the side of the screen, and then it stays there. So now to create an elevation, like for example, I'm willing to create, let's just make a north elevation. That's this part of the building. I click on north elevation. So the software, similar to the section, it is asking me to create the elevation view. Yes, please do that. And then I have this specific view, and this is still dynamic. Yeah, it's linked to the model. This means when I click on this one, I can see this is a window. These are railings, columns, and walls, and slabs, and terrains. So, but this still looks like less like an elevation, but more like a contour drawing. But if I would like to highlight the material patterns and the shading sometimes, then I can go to the navigation bar here, and I can enable this option. This is for the shading, which brings up this dialog, and then here I can set up the settings, how I would like to make the shadows appearing on my drawing, like a drawing part of it. What sort of settings I would like to use when I would like to represent the surfaces, and if you would like to see the pattern of that surface, you should go with this option here. And there is also an option to create the shading with sunlight, or a very specific elevation shadow, which means now just you can imagine that when you have a specific daytime setting and you set up the different views, different elevations of the building, and if you would use the sun shadow option, you would see some parts completely shaded. And that's not good. So this is solved by the elevation shadow. Elevation shadow always appears like that, which
with
you
a 45 degree
which
angle.
with a 45-degree angle shading, and then this allows you to see the depth of the elevation.
What governs the texture or the pattern on the elevation?
Well, this is quite similar to how the software treats the materials inside the building parts. That is the same how it happens on the surface of any sort of object. Like, let's just go, this is actually a wall. So I'm going to the settings of this wall. This wall has a stone wall material. Well, the stone wall actually is like this, which we can easily see on the 3D. But this stone wall also has the material settings, and in the material settings you can not only set up the hatch on section, but you can also set up the hatch in 3D. And now this is actually 3D, even though it looks like a drawing.
Yes.
So this is how you can set it up, and then you can see that this is actually represented like this because it has a rock fill, a rock pattern, a rock hatch. And that's something that you can easily customize by yourself, or you can just, like for example, in this case, this looks like a very strong impact on the elevation, and I don't want to see that, so I'm just simply disabling this representation, the hatch representation in 3D. So I just click OK, and so it's still there, but it's not visible here. I can see still on the 3D, I will see it on the renders, but I won't see on the elevation. So I click on this one, and this is how it happens. Now there is one more thing that I'm about to talk when we treat the elevation. Now the elevation is by default, it's kind of an infinite plane of the building view. Now, sometimes I don't want to see that. Like, for example, these here are obviously some, like those are just supporting walls. I don't want to see them fully extending how I model them. I just would like to see this model appearing on the elevation from this point to this point. In that case, I can go back to the 2D, and as you can see, on the 2D, I can easily see something called the elevation symbol, this here. This appears on all the elevation, I mean all the floors. So whichever floor you go to, you can select it, and you can see the length of that elevation.
So
now
you just trim it back?
Yeah, but there is one setting that you need to make sure it's allowed, and this is inside the settings of the elevation symbol. And inside the elevation symbol, there is the setting that allows you to make the elevation end at the end points of the elevation line, and this is what you can set up here. Also, there are options that allows you to set up lower limits and upper limits, and also here you can disable objects if you don't want to see them. So this is kind of similar to how the elevations, I mean the sections, are also treated. So this is where you can set that section up. So I just click on the partial elevation view, display the division between the section ends, and I click OK, and then yeah, well, I'm updating it, but there will be no change yet because the length is still the same. So I'm clicking here, and I'm changing the length. I just would like to, sorry, I just clicked on the wrong option. So I just click here, I click on the endpoint, and I just would like to modify the profile of this whole thing, modify the length of it. Let's just make it locked and move until this point, and I do that the same here until, for example, this endpoint, and enter, and yes, create it, and then the software will make the limits trimmed out of this drawing, like here.
Now, how do you unlink this drawing? Because maybe you want to detail it some more. So how do you tear it off the model?
Well, yeah. So this is still a vector drawing. This is represented here now. The vector drawing just as the section. Now, if I would like to make a line copy of it, which I can treat it as a line drawing, then I can just quickly select it and click on Control. I mean, just Control copy it, and then click on the endpoint or any place of this drawing. This will be the reference point. This is where the software picks it up. And then when I place it, for example, on my floor plan, and I just paste it here, Control V, then it appears. Now, as you can see, it is visually similar to the original one. The difference here is that when I zoom in here, I can see that this is a window. It's appearing here. But if I zoom in here, I can see that this is actually polyline or hatch or something like that. And this makes it sometimes easier to make changes that I would otherwise not be able to do, because that means modeling. And for example, let's make say that I'm not on that level yet, or I'm not willing to model some parts, but I'm easily placing a symbol on it or something like that. I can remove parts, and this won't change the model. It won't break the model.
It's not linked anymore.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
These kind of things. Now comes the part when we start putting everything together onto plot layouts. So a few words about how that happens. So how do you create a plot layout, and what do you put on them?
Yeah, and about organizing the project,
Yes,
because just as you saw, I removed this drawing, and the reason to that, it's not a nice layout if I have all my drawings on a simple floor plan, organize them next to each other. I prefer to work well organized when all my drawings are having their own purpose, and I'm not mixing up floor plans with sections and elevations or something like that. So I'm actually creating a new drawing, a new view, a new 2D drawing, which will be named accordingly. Like for example, this will be the 2D elevations. So these are the unlinked copies of the original elevations, which I'm using this for, and I, control paste it. So it's still the same content, it's still a line drawing, but now separate. I have a different drawing. And the reason to that is because when I have this here, and then I go back to the elevations, and I would like to create a new elevation, like the south elevation or the east elevation or something like that, then I can use this other drawing as a kind of a book, a collector book of drawings. Then let me just quickly set the same settings up here. Okay, there's shaded and elevation and shadow contours and so on. So the software creates that, and then I go back to the selection. I will select the whole drawing, make a copy of it. Sometimes it takes longer because now the software is calculating all the shadow contours. So you just select it, Control Copy, Control C, and then you find your drawing, which allows as 2D elevations, and I just enlarge that. And here, instead of copying it next to the original one, I use the level system, the floor system of this drawing, because this drawing actually has floors, but now it's actually not a ground floor. This was the north elevation. And then now there will be the, I believe this was the west elevation, okay? So this will be the west elevation. Anyhow, I can rename them at any time, so no problem. And I can just rename the rest. And I click OK. So I just move on to the west elevation empty drawing part, and I paste it here. So my drawing is very well organized. I can see the drawing stacked on top of each other. And sooner or later, if I don't want to use the original linked copies, I can actually, just simply go there and close that at any time, and then I will end up with less drawings on my content, but kind of
but you know where to find them.
Kind of vertically organize them as well, not just horizontally.
It's important that you just did that, because what happens if you close the drawing? How do you restore it?
Now, when you close a drawing, any sort of drawing, those appear in the project navigator still, so they are not discarded yet. They will appear at the bottom of the list, and they are called hidden views. And as you can see, I have a few of them appearing here. So whenever I close that, it appeared in the elevation drawing. So that's where I can find it. And if I click back on this drawing, it will come back, and then I just still use it as before.
Perfect. So how do we put all these onto a plot layout, or more layouts too?
Well, if you would like to create a plot layout, the easiest way is to go to the documentation and organize it and prepare a plot layout. And preparing a plot layout is actually just creating a virtual paper or multiple pages of virtual papers. So you can set up the format of this paper, you can set up the orientation of that, and also you can set up the sort of plot stamp or title box. These are actually groups that you can create on your own. These here are built in the software, but you can also create your own. I will just quickly show that how that works. So I will use this one, and I click OK. So the software actually creates the plot layout, and it actually autofills this plot layout, which I have selected, because it understands that I already filled up this information in the file option, and when I hit OK, these appear here. Now, when I go to the file BIM and to the the project parameters, this is where I did that already. So that's why it allows me to quickly fill that up.
So how do you put things onto here?
Onto here, you can put any sort of drawings that you can find in the project navigator easily. You just find the drawing. Now, I'm willing to place the ground floor of this building, so I'm just finding it in the floor plans. Ground floor. I click and drag, and I release it here. And then I say, okay, this should be a 1:100 representation of this drawing. And then the software reads that, and I can just place it someplace here. And this is not a line copy. This is the drawing itself.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is the original. It's like a viewport or a portal to the original drawing. So whenever I make changes on the original drawing, it will be updated here. Let me just quickly show you an example to that. Like, for example, I don't like how this symbol is organized here. It's overlapping other things. It's not clear. So I'm going back to the original drawing. I'm just shifting it, and I just use an offset, and I just place it someplace here. It's much better there. Yeah, let's just reorganize that, and then now it appears over there. So now when I go back to the original drawing, let me just reorganize the interface here so we can easily see what we have here. So now we have the drawing, 3D model, dynamic section, dynamic elevation, and the plot layout. So I'm just clicking on this one. And see, now this is not updated yet, but it's simply because of this this method that ARCHLine employs everywhere, which happens when you have the time, you can decide to refresh the content.
So you don't overburden your computer with things that you don't need.
So now all you need to do is just to click on the content and say that, okay, refresh either all the layouts that you might already have, or only refresh this one, because you know that this is the only part that has changed. So now then the software actually rereads the content, and then you can see that easily here.
Another important thing is that on the right hand side we see another elevation symbol. I don't want to modify that on the drawing, but I want to make it disappear on the layout, because I don't need that. How do I do that?
Yeah, well, instead of you can actually put it on a layer. That's also a solution, but what I'm willing to show you, that you can actually crop the contour. So you can say that when you select this virtual view of that original content, then you can just click on the edge and say that I would like to offset that, and I just I just keep that part. And this happens the other way around as well. So when you made something smaller and then the design changed and it became larger, then you don't need to replace it and remove it and place it again, but you can just modify the contours of the existing one. Talking about that, you can actually place kind of partial drawings on this as well. In that case, instead of clicking and dragging this from here to here, which can be done as well, you would go to the original drawing and tell the software that you would like to actually copy a part to the plot layout. And in that case, you just click OK. And let me just copy this specific part, like this here. Yeah, so this one, with this corner point. And then I'm going here to the plot layout, and I use the plot layout and paste to plot layout, perhaps in another scaling, and I just place it next to it. So I still see the same drawing with different representations.
So you can have many versions.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later in detail, but
yeah,
how do I get this printed out?
If I would like to print that, the simplest way is to go to the print or the print to PDF. It really depends on which, if I'm willing to print it on a plotter or a printer, I will go with the first one. If I already know that I would like to make an archive copy into a PDF file, I will go with this one. Now, PDF printing comes actually with 3 options. There is a generic PDF printing, and some countries demand a level B or level A conformance PDF files. You can go with those. And then when you set up the setting, you can go to the file and you can tell that, well, okay, this will be, let's just save it to the desktop. This will be the, I don't know, layout 1. And just say, okay, save it. And then this was, I believe, A2, so that's fine. It was landscape. And then there is an important thing, that the scale factor. Actually, there is the content, but it's so tiny.
It's there. Because we have already put it into a 1:100 scale, right?
Yeah.
So now it's 1 to what, 10,000?
10,000. Yeah. If I don't change the scale factor. Now, if you print a plot layout, the scale factor is only and always 1:1, because you actually print the original size paper itself. So this is how you can organize the content, and when you click on, for example, center the plot, or you would like to manually refine it, you can do all those things with that. And when you click on print, the software will actually create the plot layout as a PDF copy of that, so you can easily share that with your clients, and they can easily open it even on their mobile phones.
What if you want to have a print queue? Several PDFs to be printed.
Yeah, for that, it's worth to know that you can actually build up a plot layout, not only with one page, but you can actually add multi-pages as well. So if you already have a plot layout and you select the plot layout, prepare plot layout, the software will actually ask the same things. You can go with OK, and then the software will tell you that you can either create an entirely new page here on this layout, or you can create an entirely new sheet, or you can actually add a new page to this one. So I will go with that option. So I created a new page here, and then that goes the same way around. So you can just fill up the details at any time. Actually, you can just come back there and make changes on the content. These are actually groups. And by the way, I didn't talk about what these are. These are line drawings that you create. So you can just create your own style. You make the drawing. You can even paste your logo. You can paste images. You can fill it up with kind of template texts or something like that. And then you can select that drawing, and you can go to the drafting group and create a group in library, so you can name it, and then you can easily select it and paste it at any time.
So if you were have another section elevation onto that plot layout on the right hand side, then how do we print all these two layouts one after the other?
In that case, I would go with the print queue option, and then I would add pages to that print queue. This happens very simple. You just click on Insert New, and then you select the drawing or the layout that you would like to print, and then you just go with that, and you can just select the page that you are about to print. Now in this case, instead of adding the whole sheet as a whole, the whole layout as one single drawing with all the pages and so on, you can actually just highlight that counter by simply selecting that with the printable area or with the view, for example, here. As you can see now, I can see the whole content, but I just would like to add the current view, click on this one, and then just select this area. So this will be one page, then I add another one as a second page, and so on. Now instead of making it and building it up completely, I will load up a version of this project, which is kind of the final version. And then I will show you how an already created built print queue looks like. And then you can see what happens when you make that print queue appearing as a PDF file. So I'm just opening this one, the following file of this
and everything
design.
Like this is already set up, so we don't have
and there are already detailed sections. By the way, talking about that, we didn't even talk about the section elevation details.
Oh,
so
yes,
I will just quickly show that, how that happens. It's appearing on the right-hand side.
On the right-hand side.
Yeah. So going back to the original topic, if we have a drawing that we would like to create a multi-page PDF with a print queue, I can just go to the print queue and build that up, just as I talked about that before. So I go to the print queue. So I added multiple pages, and because I used the exact same file name, when I click on print, the software will publish page by page into the same PDF as a multi-page PDF. So I actually opened that up here, and that's it. I already made a print like that. See, this is an 8-page PDF, and the first and the second and the elevations and so on. So these are the pages that I've printed.
Perfect. Can we talk about numerical outputs now, lists and schedules and things
Yeah,
like
but
that?
before we do that, let's just not forget to talk about the elevation. So,
yes.
So if you would like to add those details like these here, this elevation annotations, then you can go to the dimension and then you will use this elevation section. So this is a very simple tool. You just select the origin and then you select what you would like to measure, and then you just place that right next to it, and then you can click on any sort of points, and then the software will actually you know, add that detail and so on and so on. So this is how it goes.
So it just goes one after the other.
Yeah.
Now on to numerical outputs, because so far we were exporting drawings and line drawings out of the model. But what happens if you want to use some kind of data? I'm thinking of Excel lists and schedules and other things you can use for documentation. How do you do these kind of tasks? Yeah, well, those are appearing in the documentation, and you can. There's two approach here. One is the quantity takeoff. The quantity takeoff generates an Excel list, and based on your selection, it creates either a building calculation, interior calculation, tiling, terrains, or I will go with the rooms now. I think this is very understandable for all of the viewers, because you might be an interior designer, I might be an architect, and both we need this information. Yes. So I think I click on yes, okay, let's just update the rooms, because I'm not sure I changed something and I would like to keep them updated. So I click OK. So now the software shuffles the whole content. It goes through all the rooms and makes changes if it's necessary, updates itself. And then when I'm done with that, I can just actually save that as a room in the area XLS file. So I just click on save, and then if I have an Microsoft Excel installed on my computer, it's actually appearing on the other screen. So let me just bring that back up. So it's here. So it appears as this calculation of used area sum list as the first page, but then you can go to the space information. So you can see a very detailed calculation of how the ground floor bathroom area is represented and how it was calculated. So it's a very detailed information. You can also go to the combined list, which is kind of a summary floor by floor. You can go to the details on the ground floor. You can go to the details on the first floor. So it's a very, very detailed list. What about schedules?
About the schedules, now those are kind of similar to Excel files, but in that case you will place a schedule table on the drawing itself. This goes.
What's the benefit for that?
Well, let's just do that first, and we can see how it works. Then the placing a schedule allows you to select a schedule, and let's just go again with the rooms first. There's room in the area, and then you can click on the OK, and then you can place a room schedule. Or you can also go with the doors or windows or walls or all sorts of items that you might have in your drawing. And then if you place that, let's just stay with the door now. It's architectural element 1 door list, and I go OK. And then the software allows me to decide either would like to select, make a collection of all the doors in my design, or only on this specific floor. I will go with the whole project. So I click OK. And then the software makes that calculation. It assembles the data, and it allows me to place that information next to the drawing, for example, here to the right-hand side. Now, when this happens, I can place it as a text, and then in that text I can see the size, the ID, and all sorts of details that I would like to represent as a drawing part here. So perhaps I terminated it. So let's just go with that again.
So the idea is that you place it down next to your drawing, and then use it as a reference with your project, right?
Yes. So let me just open the previous project, because I'm sure that is appearing as I intended. So yes. It's here. So I just go with that one and go to the annotation, documentation, schedule, placing a schedule. So I went with the door, and this is a door schedule with all these details, and I click OK and yes. So now the software calculates the doors. Yeah.
So it takes every single one of them into account. Yeah. Provided that you could do the same thing with the windows as well, not in the same table, right? So you have to do it.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's not happening now. We will show you it in another session.
And show that. But instead, let's talk about one other thing which is connected to documentation, and that is the tiling schedules.
Well, the tiling schedules are something that you can collect as detailed information for the wall surfaces and so on. Well, this project actually does not have any sort of tiling, but if I create one, it's something that I usually create as an Excel file, and this appears here. So the software can calculate all the bathroom tiling, all the
by rooms, right?
Yeah, by room as well. So this really is something that you can export into an Excel file, and then you can the software actually calculates the amount of tiles that is necessary to cover an area with that specific tile, and it makes a sum of that.
There's a special area of documentation, and that is when we have instead of creating documentation, we create export files which can be used in other software products.
Yeah.
What are the options?
Well, first things first, let's just go with the most popular option, which is, I believe, the DWG file. That is a fairly widely used format, and in that case, you would go to the drawing that you would like to export. Like this is, in this case, this is the ground floor. And I would like to export all my floors in a DWG file. So I go to the drawing, file, export, and I select DWG. Now in this case, I can determine where I would like to save it. Let's just save it to the desktop now, and I make a new folder. This will be export.
What if you have multi-level drawings? I mean, this one is a multiple floor drawing, so how do you export that?
Well, in that case, this will be actually saved as multiple levels. Let me just save this. This will be the floor plan, floor plans, and I click save, and then the software actually asks me if whether I like to save all of them into several DWG files. Then I can set up the unit, I can set up the version. If I'm communicating with people using older versions of DWG files or something like that, I can go with that, and when I click OK, then the software exports that information, and it creates the files themselves as separate individual items in that specific folder on the desktop in the export, and this is what happens here.
Another good way is, and that is one of the flagships of this webinar series, what we are doing is how to communicate with other BIM software products, and that is the Ifc Export Format. Now, I'm sure that you are familiar with this format. It exports not only the geometry, but also the data of your model. And that is very good, because then you are not exporting just line drawings where the lines are up for interpretation. Instead, you are exporting the walls, the doors and windows and slabs and everything like that. So in other BIM software, you can recognize these elements and keep on working with that.
We will talk about this a little bit more detailed in the following session, but for now, it's good to say that now you go to the file, export IFC, and then you can save it as just as you told, as a building. And now this building will be not a documentation. It will be the building. It will be the walls. It will be the doors and windows and things like that. So if you would like to send the annotated drawing itself, you would go with DWG files. You would go with PDF files or something like that. But if you would like to communicate the building itself with all that details, then you will go with an IFC file.
Alternatively, if you want to communicate with third-party renderers, rendering engines,
in that case,
there are dedicated file formats for that.
In that case, you would go with the export and the export. This brings up the export dialog, which comes with the full list of available file formats that you can use. You can export the file into SketchUp, 3ds files, OBJ files, and so on, just to talk about the most common 3D file formats, and also Atlantis, Cinema 4D, Thea, and FBX to talk about the visual representations and so on. And as you can see, you can find all those settings and all those formats here to save your project into these files.
One very important thing to point out, and that is something that we haven't done, but whenever you are making an export, it's always good to export to subfolders.
Like I did now in the...
exactly, because if you, sometimes certain export formats, for instance, OBJ, comes with many additional files. So if you just export something to your desktop, then you might end up with hundreds of images and textures and things like that. So
it's not what you want,
Now, there's one topic I wanted to discuss before we talk about the questions that are coming in, and that is using design phases during documentation. And that is something that we did talk about design phases before, but we didn't say how to use them for creating documentational results.
Yeah, before I do that, because I reloaded the previous version where I don't have a plot layout, let me just quickly prepare a plot layout. That's not important for the design phases, but I would like to represent how it comes later when you already have a design phase documented and then you would like to add another one. So I just quickly prepare one as an A2 page. Yeah, okay, let's just go with that one and let's just go with these options and so on. So I just place this ground floor on my floor plan as a 1:100 drawing like this one. So now let's say we are already done with the existing plan, and then now we would like to create a new documentation filled up with new information of what sort of items will be demolished. Now first things first, talking about the design phases. When you design something in ARCHLine, by default you always design the existing phase. So if you don't want to work with phases, then you're done. You don't have to do anything. But if you would like to add the new phase, like the demolition phase, all you need to do is just to zoom into your drawing and go to the edit and use the phases tool. In this case, I'm willing to demolish this and this wall, for example.
Have like an open concept kitchen or something.
Yeah. So I go here and I just use this one, change to demolition, and I change this and this to be demolished. Now here, there is not much of a change, but if I move my mouse here to the bottom, here I can see these are the phases, and then by default the software represents the drawing as in all the phases. But if I move to the existing plan, I can see it how it is in the existing version, like on the plot layout now, and then I can move on to the next one, which is the demolition plan. And then now the demolition plan appears red where these things are demolished. By default, this is, by design, this is happening because of graphic overrides, which is connected to the design phases, which you can handle here as well. And these are the graphic overrides. And this is why the to be demolished things are by default red. So now this won't change the layout that I already created because that was the existing phase. I can actually go to the details, select the settings, and I can not only change the layer settings and change the floor or the scaling of this one, but I can change the phase filter. Now this should be the existing plan. I'm fine with that, okay? But I would like to make a copy of that, and I would like to change it to represent the demolition phase as well.
Can you copy it here, or you need to add another version?
Both works. So I can just go here and move a copy of this one. And in that case, I select this one here, go to the properties, and then change this to demolition plan, and okay. So now I have the same drawing represented twice, once in the existing phase and once in the following demolition phase. And if I have 4 phases, like for example after demolition and the new design, I can organize them all next to each other on one single plot layout.
Perfect, and that is what we wanted to discuss now, but I see that the questions are roaring in, so let's talk about them. So first of all, we have one here. Is it possible to make quantities to appear in a table next to a section drawing, not as a single Excel file? Example, I would like to have a section with tiling drawing and next to it a table showing tiling quantities. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't it be a good practice to export it as an Excel, but you can copy back the Excel file into the drawing?
That's also an option, or you can go with the schedules. So the schedule places that sort of table, actually. With all the details. I did not show that how it happens, but this is a table text which you can place onto your any sort of drawings, and you can actually make copies of that. So that's let me just show you an example to a table text, which is a very simple thing. You go to the drafting, and there is the text, and there is the text in table. That you can either manually assemble any sort of table text if you would like to create something, or you can use the schedule tool to automatically assemble a table which is in connection with the original drawing as well. So whenever something changes on the original drawing, the schedules are to be updated. So you can right click on the schedule and you can update that.
Here's another one. When drawing drainage and pipe surfaces on plan, is there any option to set Z values to the lines to show schematics for pipe isometrics if required for building control purposes? Z values are not automatically by default portrayed. So for instance, if you use the sweep command to create a pipe drainage system, then if you want to mark the elevation values on the floor plan or on the layout, you have to do that manually with text, right?
Or you can use either the levels. If it's appearing on an elevation, obviously you can use the elevation drawings, or you can use the this symbol which I used before, the elevation on 2D drawing. You might not likely to be able to measure any sort of 3D elevations with that one, but you will be able to change the text easily, so you can just organize. So you can treat them as symbols.
Yeah, that's right. So that's not something that you would do automatically. That's something that you have to do manually for the measurements. And that is actually what I wanted to discuss. Thank you very much for the questions. And I see they are thanking for the answers as well, and that's always very good. So we are going to meet next week when we talk about the BIM in practice topic, which is, we hinted at this several times, and now we are going to dedicate a whole show about talking about the benefits of BIM for an everyday project like this one. So we will talk about what are the BIM tools that you can use in ARCHLine and BIM in general. What are the things that you can use to make your design practice even more fluent and accurate. Yeah. And also we talk about how to collaborate with other software products or other designers, even if they're using other platforms as well. And we'll discuss what to expect when you pass over the plans to another computer, another workstation, another software, and see how data transforms.
Yeah, and we will talk about all the things that you can check when you receive an IFC file, and that we will also show you a free tool that you can use to double check whether you have exported the correct data before someone else kind of imports that into their own software.
So that will be next week on Wednesday, same time, 3 p.m. Central European time. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next week, and until then, enjoy using the program.
Thank you for your questions.
Yes,
goodbye.
They help a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye-bye.